Hey everybody, today I have a recipe for bacon dog biscuits, and these are a favorite in our home. As you can tell, we have dogs already begging because they can smell the bacon grease. No, Molly. So the first thing you want to do is preheat your oven to 350 degrees, And while that's preheating, you're going to make your batter. So the batter is really simple, which I love. There are only 4 easy ingredients. First is 2 cups of wheat flour, which I already have measured out here. Molly, down. So 2 cups of wheat flour, 1 egg, half a cup of warm water, and this is half a cup of bacon grease. So when you cook bacon, just save those drippings. I cook mine on a griddle, so it makes it really easy. It all collects in that little tray underneath, so it makes that really easy to do. If you do it in a frying pan, just make sure you save that, dump it in. I save my bacon grease all the time. Whenever I cook, I usually don't cook bacon very often, so I save it when I do. You can refrigerate bacon grease, and then if you need it for this recipe, say you're cooking bacon today, but you're not going to make these treats till you think maybe a little later on in the week, you can put the bacon grease right in the refrigerator and keep it for until you need it, and then just heat it up in the microwave, melt it down. So you're going to stir up those 4 ingredients. Like I said, that's it. So it's very simple, very easy, and you're going to stir those up. They're going to start to form a dough. If the dough's a little dry, you can add a little bit more wheat flour. If it's a little bit if the dough's a little moist, a little too moist and sticky, you can add a little bit more wheat flour. If the dough's a little dry, you can either add a little bit more bacon grease or a little bit more water, anything to just moisten it up a little bit. So I just want to scrape everything off the sides there, and my dough is actually looking pretty good. I don't think I'll have to add anything else. Sometimes I add a little bit of extra flour at the end, but today it doesn't look like it, so that's great. So now you've got your dough formed here. And what you want to do, if you've seen any of my other biscuit recipes, you're going to flour a flat surface. I use the countertop. Sprinkle just like a tablespoon of flour, kind of spread it out. Put your dough on, and you're going to roll it out until it's about 1/4 inch thick. And then you can cut it however you want to. I cut mine, I just use mine with a pizza roller, and I'll show you how I do that in just a minute. Some people use cookie cutters because they want their biscuits to be in cute little shapes. Whatever you choose, it's fine as long as you cut them into pieces, that are the size for your dog. So for example, we have 2 large breeds and a small breed. I cut some that are about like a 1 inch by 1 inch square. Those are for our small breed. And then I cut some that are like a 2 inch by 1 inch rectangle, and those are for our larger dogs. So I'm going to go ahead and flour the countertop. The other thing you're going to want to do is get a baking sheet, like a cookie sheet, and you're going to want to just grease that and flour that lightly. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I will come back and show you after I've rolled the dough out and all that stuff, so you guys don't have to watch me do all of that, and then I will show you the next steps. I have my dough here on the counter. You can't really see it because my wheat flour kind of blends in with my countertop, but it's floured all around here, so there's a nice big floured area. And I have my greased and floured cookie sheet here ready to go. Again, as I explained earlier, I use a pizza cutter to cut my dough, but you can use cookie cutters if you prefer. If you don't have a pizza cutter and you don't want to use cookie cutters or don't have cookie cutters, you can just use a knife. So you're just going to go ahead. The one thing I forgot to get out was my roller. So you're just going to go ahead and roll your dough out. You'll notice it's a little bit greasy. Actually, sorry about that. I'm going to put a little flour on my roller. I forgot to do that. And you just heard my oven preheat, so that's ready to go. So you roll them out until they're about a half an inch or so, maybe a little less than that, maybe a quarter of an inch thick. And just make sure, I always like to give the tip to roll out the middle. A lot of times people get so concerned with rolling out the edges like this that they forget they have a thicker portion in the middle. It's not really that big of a deal. The problem is going to come when you're cooking and you have these thicker cookies and the thinner cookies, and your thick cookies won't cook all the way through, the thinner cookies will be a little crispy. So okay, so that looks good for me. What I do is just take my pizza cutter and I just cut strips, and as I mentioned to you, I cut about 1 inch by 1 inch strips for my little dog. So I cut these long strips about 1 inch wide. Obviously, I don't really measure it or pay attention to that. And then I do some that are smaller, and those are for our little beagle. And then as I go, I just make some a little bit wider, and those are for our larger breeds, and I just put them in separate baggies so I know which ones are, not that they're hard to pick out, I guess, but I know I have them easily separated into large and small. So that's the reason I use the pizza cutter. It's quick, it's simple, and I'm already finished. So you take your cookie sheet and you just pick the pieces up and lay them nicely on here. You don't have to worry about spreading them out a lot because there's no rising agent, there's no yeast or anything, so they're not going to expand. You can just put them, fairly close together just to fit as many on the pan as you can. I'm not going to fill this whole cookie sheet. Don't worry, you don't have to watch that whole thing. But I am going to put a few on here, and then some people like to get fancy and design them or decorate them. One of the things that you can use if you have if you have chopsticks or if you have skewers hanging around your kitchen. Some people, we're in the summer months right now, so some people have skewers hanging around because they've used them for barbecues or whatever. Usually what I like to do, actually, I just leave them plain. But if you want to make them, at Christmas time, we always make cookies, different kinds of dog treats, and I put them in little baggies and gift them as hostess gifts and things like that to people with dogs. So when I want to make them fancy, I use a fork, and it just leaves those little dots in the middle of your cookie. You could do 2 on some of the bigger ones. So however you want to do them, we have done in the past, when the kids do them with me as gifts and things like that, we will use like a skewer or just something, even like a knitting needle, anything with like one pointed end. And for example, if your last name begins with an S, you could make dots in the shape of an S on the cookies or something like that as a cute little homemade gift idea. So I just want to throw that out there for any of you guys, that not that it's close to any holidays, but as the holidays approach, and if you have anybody that you'd like to gift them to right now, that always works as a really cute idea. We usually make 2 or 3 different kinds, and we put a few of each kind in cute little bags or a little basket or tin or whatever I happen to find at the time. So I am going to go ahead and bake these now. Actually, I may as well fill the cookie sheet because I'm almost done. So sorry, you'll have to just be patient with me for 1 more minute, but my cookie sheet's almost full. Depending on the size of the cookies that you cut, usually I get about 4 dozen cookies when I cut them like this. If you cut them a little bit bigger, obviously you'll get less. If you only have small breeds and you cut them all smaller, you might get close to 6 dozen cookies. And now you want to cook them, you want to bake them, so mine are all put on this cookie sheet. You're going to bake them, again, your oven's preheated to 350 degrees. And you want to bake them for about 20 minutes. You'll know when they're done, they dry out, they get crunchy like a regular cookie, so I'm going to set my timer for 20 minutes. And that's it. Once they cool, they're good to go. These don't need to be refrigerated. I do refrigerate mine. I think it just adds to the shelf life a little bit where they are homemade. They don't have any preservatives or anything like that. If you're only going to keep them for a few days, you know, you don't need to, but where it makes such a big batch, I stick mine in the refrigerator. They'll usually last me 7 to 10 days for our dogs. So usually I make a batch like this and I freeze half of them. So today, like these that are left over, I will probably stick in the freezer. And how I do that is I lay them on a cookie sheet and then I freeze them. So I put it flat in the freezer and they freeze. And then once they're frozen, I put them in a baggie. So you can do that if you don't treat your dogs often, which we don't. Again, if you're giving them away or something like that, you know, absolutely. Or you can cut this recipe in half if you'd like to and do it that way, whatever works for you. But usually I make the whole batch and then I freeze so that next time I don't have to do the prep work and I can just pop them, take them out of the freezer and pop them in the oven and bake them and they're good to go. So I will be back next week with another recipe. Next week I have a dog food recipe for you, so be looking for that. Of course, if you have any questions, you guys can always contact me via our website or our social media pages. You can find us on topdogtips.com, of course, and we have Facebook, Twitter, Google+, YouTube, of course, if you're watching this on our YouTube channel. So any way that you leave a comment or a question, that will get back to me and I will be sure to answer that for you. And I will see you guys next time with a dog food recipe. Have a great week, everyone.